An Equestrian Invasion is based on the original 1938 broadcast of War of the Worlds starring Orson Welles, owned by CBS and Mercury Theater on the Air. It is adapted to My Little Pony: Friendship is Magic, which is owned by Faust, Hasbro, and The Hub. Please support the official releases. Script adapted by Vos de Sueños, edited and pre-read by James Cork, Command Spry, Mobius, Bronode, and the Flying Spinosaurus. Vos de Sueños as Announcer 1, Silver Speech, Focal Lens, Background Voices, General Windshear, and Operator 5. Deep Thought as Announcer 2. Master Code as Announcer 3, Operator 1, and Operator 3. Doomwads 765 as Golden Gallops. eCopen as Mr. Peartree. Rena-chan as the Police Mare and Princess Luna. Paws Dandy as Background Voices and Operator 2. The Vox Virus as Operator 4 and Officer. Mobius as Captain Shortwave, Final Gamer James as Stargazer and Observer, Goatmon as Gunner, Stephanie Bell Chambers as Lieutenant Apple, and Adam the Person as Stranger. Music by Command Spry, Vos de Sueños, and Mr. E380. Art for YouTube by James Cork and Vos de Sueños.
The Equestria Broadcasting Service and its affiliated stations present Silver Speech in the Equestria Theater on the Air in An Equestrian Invasion by Quillstroke.
We know now that in the early years of the current age, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than ponies and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as ponies busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a mare with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complacence, ponies went to and fro throughout Equestria about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, pony has inherited out of the dark mysteries of time and space. Yet, across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that to our minds are as ours are to the parasprites in the Everfree, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this planet with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 12th year of the current age came the great disillusionment. It was near the end of autumn. Business was better. The discord scare was over. More stallions were back at work. Sales were picking up, and on this particular evening, the Trottingham service estimated that 32,000 ponies were listening in on radios.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Rome, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over Canterlot, bringing a forecast of rain, accompanied by winds of light gale force which the Royal Weather Service is unable to disperse. Maximum temperature 66, minimum 48. This weather report comes to you from the Trottingham Weather Patrol. We take you now to the Meridian Room in the Hotel Park Plaza in downtown Manhattan, where you will be entertained by the music of Roman Ramba and his orchestra.
Good evening, fillies and gentlecolts, from the Meridian Room in the Park Plaza Hotel in Manhattan, where we're bringing the music of Roman Ramba and his orchestra. With the touch of the Zabrak, Roman Ramba leads off with Tribute to the Trot.
Ladies and gentlecolts, we interrupt our program of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Red Shift of the Mount Jennings Observatory in Appaloosa reports observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the Moon. The spectroscope indicates the gas to be composed of hydrogen and moving towards the planet with enormous velocity. Professor Focal Lens of the observatory at Trottingham confirms Red Shift's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a dragon, unquote. We now return you to the music of Roman Ramba, playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel, situated in downtown Manhattan.
And now a tune that never loses flavor, the ever-popular Stardust. Roman Ramba and his orchestra.
Phillies and JacksonNicholls, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Royal Weather Service has requested the large observatories of the country to keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the lunar surface. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with the noted astronomer Professor Focal Lens, who will give us his views on this event. In a few moments we will take you to the observatory at Trottingham. Until then, we return you to the music of Roman Ramba and his orchestra. We are now ready to take you to the Trotting Observatory at Trottingham, where our commentator Golden Gallops will interview Professor Focal Lens, the famous astronomer. We take you now to Trottingham.
Good evening, Phillies and JacksonNicholls. This is Golden Gallops speaking to you from the observatory at Trottingham. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanism of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the clockwork gears moving the aperture of the machine. Professor Focal Lens stands directly above me on a small platform, peering through the giant lens. Now I ask you to be patient, Phillies and JacksonNicholls, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides his ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Focal Lens may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
At any time, Mr. Gallops.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the moon through your telescope?
Well, nothing unusual at the moment, Mr. Gallops. A light gray swimming in a blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because the moon happens to be at the point nearest to Equestria. In opposition, as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor Focal Lens?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mr. Gallops. Although that's the popular conjecture of those who imagine the moon to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of our imperfect telescopes trying to properly render the dust strata on the surface.
Then you're quite convinced as a scientist that living intelligence as we know it does not exist on the moon?
I'd say the chances against it are 1,000 to 1, if you don't count Princess Luna's visit.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the lunar surface at regular intervals?
Mr. Gallops, I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is the moon from Equestria?
Approximately 385,000 kilometers.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just a moment, Phillies and JacksonNicholls. Somebody has just handed Professor Focal Lens a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are speaking to you from the observatory in Trottingham, where we are interviewing the world-famous astronomer Professor Focal Lens. One moment, please. Professor Focal Lens has passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read the message to the listening audience?
Certainly, Mr. Gallops.
Phillies and JacksonNicholls, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Focal Lens from Dr. Gray of the National History Museum in Manhattan. Quote, 6:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 kilometers of Trottingham. Please investigate. Signed, Comet Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Unquote. Professor Focal Lens, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the moon?
Oh, hardly, Mr. Gallops. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size. Its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, We shall conduct a search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Fillies and Gentlecoats, for the past 10 minutes we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Trottingham, bringing you a special interview with Professor Focal Lens, noted astronomer. This is Golden Gallops speaking. We are returning you now to our Manhattan studio.
Fillies and Gentlecoats, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada. Professor Morrison at Gallup University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on our moon between the hours of 4:45 p.m. and 6:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from our observatories. Now nearer home comes a special bulletin from Huffington. It is reported that at 5:50 p.m., a huge flaming object believed to be a meteorite fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grazer's Hills, 22 kilometers from Huffington. The flash in the sky was visible within a radius of several hundred kilometers, and the noise of the impact was heard as far east as Prance. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene and will have our commentator Golden Gallops give you a word picture of the scene as soon as he can reach there from Trottingham. In the meantime, we take you to the Hotel Martinet in Canterlot, where Octavia Philharmonica and her orchestra are offering a program of dance music. We take you now to Grazer's Hills.
Fillies and Gentlecoats, this is Golden Gallops again, out at the Pear Tree Farm, Grazer's Hills. Professor Focal Lens and myself made the 6 kilometers from Trottingham in 10 minutes. Well, I hardly know where to begin to paint for you a word picture of this strange scene before my eyes, like something out of a modern Draconian Nights. Well, I just got here. I haven't had a chance to look around yet. I guess that's it. Yes, I guess that's the thing directly in front of me, half buried in a vast pit. Must have struck with terrific force. The ground is covered with splinters of a tree. It must have struck on its way down. What I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of... What would you say, Professor Focal Lens?
What's that?
What would you say? What's the diameter of this?
About 30 meters.
About 30 meters. The metal on the sheath is... well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish-white, as curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of their efforts at the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please?
One side there, one side.
While the police are pushing the crowd back, here's Mr. Peartree, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Peartree, would you please tell the radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard? And step closer, please. Fillies and Gentlecoats, this is Mr. Peartree.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please, sir.
Pardon me?
Louder, please. Closer.
Yes, sir. I was listening to the radio and kind of drowsing. That professor fellow was talking about the moon, so I was half dozing and half asleep.
Yes, Mr. Peartree, and then what happened?
Well, as I was saying, I was listening to the radio, kind of halfways.
Yes, Mr. Peartree, and then you saw something?
Well, not first off. I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound. like this. Kind of like a summer sun rocket.
Yes, then what?
I turned my head out the window and would have sworn I was asleep and dreaming.
Yes?
I seen a kind of greenish streak, and then zingo! Something smacked the ground. Knocked me clear off my sitting pillow.
Well, were you framed, Mr. Peartree?
Well, I ain't quite sure. I reckon I was kind of riled.
Well, thank you, Mr. Peartree. Thank you very much.
Want me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Fillies and Gentle-Colts, you've just heard Mr. Peartree, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. Dozens of ponies are in a field in back of us, and the police are trying to rope off the roadway leading into the farm, but it's no use. They're breaking right through. Flashlights throw an enormous spotlight on the pit where the object's half buried. Some of the more daring souls now are venturing near the edge. Their silhouettes stand out against the metal sheen. One stallion wants to touch the thing. He's having an argument with the policeman. Now the policeman wins. Now, Fillies and Gentle-Colts, there's something I haven't mentioned in all this excitement, but it's becoming more distinct. Perhaps you've caught it already on your radio? Listen, please. Do you hear it? It's a curious humming sound that seems to come from inside the object. Move the microphone nearer. Here. Now we're not more than 7 meters away. Can you hear it now, Professor Focal Lens?
Yes, Mr. Gallops.
Can you tell us the meaning of that scraping noise inside the thing?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found in this country, likely not on this planet. Friction with the atmosphere usually tears holes in a meteorite. This thing is smooth and, as you can see, of cylindrical shape.
Just a minute, something's happening. Fillies and Gentle-Colts, this is terrific. This end of the thing is beginning to flake off. The top is beginning to rotate like a screw, and the thing must be hollow. Fillies and Gentle-Colts, this is the most terrifying thing I've ever witnessed. Well, wait a minute, some pony's crawling out of the hollow top. Some pony or something. I can see peering out of that black hole 2 luminous discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Good heavens, something's wriggling out of the shadows like a gray snake. Now it's another one, and another one, and another one. They look like tentacles to me. There, I can see the thing's body now. It's large. Large as an Ursa Minor. It glistens like wet leather, but that face, Fillies and Gentle-Colts, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it, it's so awful.
It's so ugly.
Its eyes are black and they gleam like a serpent. The mouth is a kind of V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. And the monster, whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's rising up now and the crowd falls back. They've seen plenty. The most extraordinary experience, Fillies and Gentle-Colts. I can't find words. Well, I'll hold this microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you? I'll be right back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening on the Pear Tree Farm, Grazes Hills. We now return you to Golden Gallops at Grazes Hills.
Fillies and Gentle-Colts, am I on? Fillies and Gentle-Colts, Fillies and Gentle-Colts, here I am, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Peartree's garden. From here I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The captain is conferring with some pony. Can't quite see who. Oh yes, I believe it's Professor Focal Lens. Yes, it is. Now they've parted and the professor moves around one side, studying the object, while the captain and 2 policemen advance with something in their hooves. I see it now. It's a white towel tied to a pole. Flag of truce, if those creatures know what that means, what anything means. Wait a minute. Something's happening. Hum-shaped is rising out of the pit. I can make it a small beam of light against a mirror. What's there? It's a jet of flame springing from the meter, and it loops right at the advancing stallions. It strikes them head on. Oh, Celestia, they're turning into flame. Now the whole field's caught on fire. The woods, the barns, it's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way now, about 20 meters to my right.
Fillies and gentlecolts, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from Grazes Hills. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return you to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from Cloudsdale. Professor von Featherbeak, speaking at a dinner at the Cloudsdale Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on the moon are undoubtedly nothing more than severe seismic disturbances on the surface of the moon. We continue now with our piano interlude.
Fillies and gentlecolts, I have just been handed a message that came from Grazers Hills by telephone. Just one moment, please. At least 40 ponies, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grazers Hills, their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you will hear will be that of Brigadier General Wynne Shear, commander of the Royal Guard contingent at Huffington.
I have been requested by Princess Luna to place the cities of Hoovington and Ponyville as far west as Trottingham and east of Canterbury under a martial law. No pony will be permitted to enter this area except by a special pass issued by a royal proclamation. 4 companies of the Royal Guard are proceeding from Hoovington to Grazers Hills, and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
You've just been listening to General Wynne Shear, commanding Celestia's Royal Guard at Huffington. In the meantime, further details of the catastrophe at Grazers Hills are coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back in their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of the fire colts to recover the bodies and extinguish the fire. The combined fire departments of south of Trottingham are fighting the flames which menace the entire countryside. In the meantime, we take you to... Just one moment, please. Fillies and gentlecolts, I have just been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the tragedy. Professor Focal Lenz has been located at a farmhouse near Grazers Hills where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his explanation of the calamity. The next voice you hear will be that of Professor Focal Lenz, brought to us by direct wire.
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grazers Hills, I can give you no authoritative information, either to their nature, their origin, or their purposes here in Equestria. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to their mysterious weapon as a heat beam. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific or arcane knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way, they're able to generate an intense heat in a shielded spell chamber of nearly absolute non-conductivity. This magic they then project through a spell matrix by means of a focusing gem of unknown composition, much as the mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. That is my conjecture on the origin of the heat beam.
Thank you, Professor Focal Lenz. Fillies and gentlecolts, here is a bulletin from Huffington. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Golden Gallops has been identified in a Huffington hospital. Now here's another bulletin from Canterlot. The Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the headquarters of the Royal Guard stationed outside of Grazers Hills. Here is a bulletin from Trottingham Junction. The fires at Grazers Hills and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit and there is no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. And now, fillies and gentlecolts, we have a special statement from Mr. Stargazer, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the Royal Guard at Hoovington to place at their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we are turning over our facilities to the Royal Guard at Hoovington.
We take you now to the field headquarters of the Royal Guard near Grazers Hills.
This is Captain Shortwave of the Signal Corps, attached to the Royal Guard now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of the Grazers Hill. Situations arising through reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in the pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry, without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with magic and aerial assistance. All cause for alarm, if such a cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. These things, whatever they are, do not even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly from the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures can scarcely stand up to the heavy spell fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their midnight blue and gold uniforms crossing back and forth in the front of the lights. Looks almost like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke in the woods bordering the Star and Main River, probably fire started by the campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of them companies is deploying on the left flank. Quick thrust and it'll all be over. Now wait a minute, I see something at the top of the cylinder. Nah, it's nothing but a shadow. Now, troops on the edge of the pear tree farm, dozens of armed stallions cross the old metal tube. Tub, rather. Wait, it wasn't a shadow. Something moving. Solid, metal, kinda shield-like affair rising up the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Wait, it's standing up on legs. Actually rearing up in some sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees and the searchlights are on it. Hold on!
Fillies and Gentlecolts, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our eyes lead to the inescapable assumption that these strange beings who landed in the equestrian farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the moon. The battle which took place tonight at Grazes Hills has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 200 colts, armed with the best our princesses have to offer, pitted against a single fighting machine of the invaders of the moon. 20 known survivors, the rest strewn across the battle area from Grazes Hills to Clopsdale, crushed and trampled to death by the metal claws of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat beam. The monster is now in control of the middle of Equestria and has effectively cut our country through its center. Communication lines are down from Cloudsdale to the Sapphire Coast. Railroad tracks are torn, and service from Manhattan to Philadelphia is discontinued, except for routing some trains through Appaloosa and Ponyville. Pathways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic equine traffic. Police and Royal Reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, fugitives will have swelled Prance, Canada, and Navarro. It is estimated to twice their normal population. Martial law prevails from Cloudsdale to Ponyville. At this time, we take you to Canterlot for a special broadcast on the national emergency, the Princess of the Night, Princess Luna.
Citizens of the nation, we shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your princesses in protecting the lives and property of its ponies. However, we wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need for calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the royal forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing your faith in us, we must continue the performance of our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of equine existence in Equestria and beyond. We thank you.
You've just heard Princess Luna speaking from Canterlot. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed that the central portion of Equestria is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat beam upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here is a special bulletin, Manhattan. Cables have been received from Zebra, Dragon, and Griffin scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the lunar surface. The majority voice the opinion that the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. There have been several attempts made to locate Professor Focalens of Trottingham, who has observed the moon mares at close range. It is feared that he was lost in the recent battle. Navarro. Scouting Pegasi report 3 moon mare machines visible above the treetops, moving north towards the city with the population fleeing ahead of them. The heat beam is still not in use. Although advancing at express-train speed, invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid the destruction of the countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize pony society. Here's a bulletin from Basking Ridge. Parasprite hunters have stumbled upon a second cylinder, similar to the first, embedded in the Great Swamp 20 kilometers south of Thunderbluff. Royal Guard vertibucks are proceeding from Navarro to blow up the second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up a position in the foothills of the Tantalus Mountains. Another bulletin from Navarro. Scouting Pegasi report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Cloudsdale. Machines also sighted by the telephone operator east of Bucksburg within 10 kilometers of Plainsfield. Here's a bulletin from Maresdale. Fleet of vertibucks carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of the enemy. Scouting Pegasi act as guides. They keep the speeding enemy in sight. Just a moment, please, Phillies and Gentlecolts. We've run special wires to the artillery line in adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. First, we take you to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery located in the Tantalus Mountains.
Range, 32 meters.
32 meters.
Projection, 39 degrees.
39 degrees.
Fire!
140 meters to the right, sir.
Shift range, 31 meters.
31 meters.
Projection, 37 degrees.
37 degrees.
Fire!
A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They stopped. The others are trying to repair it.
Quick, get the range. Shift, 30 meters.
30 meters.
Projection, 27 degrees.
27 degrees.
Fire!
Can't see the shell land, sir. They're letting off a smoke.
What is it?
Black smoke, sir. It's moving this way. Lying close to the ground. It's moving fast.
Put on gas masks. Get ready to fire. Shift to 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection, 24 degrees.
24 degrees.
Fire!
Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer.
Get the range.
23 meters.
23 meters.
23 meters.
Projection, 22 degrees.
Royal Vertibuck, B742 off Thunder Bluff, Lieutenant Apple commanding 8 bucks. Reporting to Commander Fairmain, Navarro. This is Apple, reporting to Commander Fairmain, Navarro. Enemy tripod machines now in sight. Reinforced by 3 machines from the Maresdale cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine partially crippled. Believed hit by shell from Army gun in Tantalus Mountains. Guns now appear silent. A heavy black fog hanging close to the ground of extreme density, nature unknown. No sign of heat beams. Enemy now turns east, crossing the Starry Main River to the marshes. Another straddles the Dash Skyway. Evident objective is Manhattan. They're pushing down a high-tension power station. The machines are close together now, and we're ready to attack. Wonderbolts circling, ready to strike. 1,000 meters and we'll be over the first. 800 meters. 600. 400. 200. There they go. The giant arm raised. Green flash! They're spraying us with flame! 1,000 meters! Engines are giving out! No chance to release bombs! Only one thing left! Drop on them. Pegasi and all! We're diving on the first one! Now the engine's gone! 8!
This is Thunderbluff calling Navarro. This is Thunderbluff calling Navarro. Come in, please!
This is Navarro. Go ahead.
Wonderbolt and 8 vertibucks in engagement with the enemy tripod machines over the bluffs. Engine incapacitated by heat beam. All crashed. 1 enemy machine destroyed. Soren and Spitfire down. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in the direction of... This is Bucksburg. This is Bucksburg. Warning. Poisonous black smoke pouring in from the Starry Main marshes. Reaches South Street. Gas masks are useless. Urge population to move into open spaces. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now spreading over Dust Boulevard.
3Z2M calling QC. 3Z2M calling QC. 3Z2M calling 9A4E. Come in, please.
This is 9A4E coming back at 3Z2M. Go ahead.
How's reception? How's reception? Okay, please. Where are you?
I'm speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building. I'm speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building, Manhattan. The megaphones and sirens you hear in the background are to warn the ponies to evacuate the city as the Moonmares approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, 300,000 ponies have moved out along the roads of Equestria. Serpent River Parkway still kept open for hoof traffic. Avoid bridges to Trottingham, hopelessly jammed. All communication with the coast closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our Royal Guards wiped out. Where is Celestia? Spellfire, Vertibucks, Wonderbolts, everything wiped out. This may be the last broadcast. We'll stay here till the end. Ponies are holding services below us in the cathedral. Now I look to the harbor, all manner of boats, overloaded with the fleeing population, pulling out from docks for Prance and beyond. Streets are all jammed. Noise and crowds like the Grand Galloping Gala in Canterlot. Wait a minute, the enemy's now in sight above the palisades. Five great machines. First one is crossing the river. I can see it from here, wading the serpent like a pony trotting through a brook. A bulletin is handed to me. Moonmare cylinders are falling all over the planet. One outside of Brazil, one in Rome, St. Star Swirl. Seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first machine reaches the shore. He stands watching, looking over the city. His steel cowled head is even with the skyscrapers. He waits for the others. They rise like a line of new towers on the city's west side. Now they're lifting their metal claws. This is the end now. Smoke comes out. Black smoke, drifting over the city. Ponies in the streets see it now. They're running towards the Serpent River. Hundreds of them. Dropping in like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached the Clockmaker Square. Ponies are trying to run away from it, but there's no use. They're falling like parasprites. Now the smoke's crossing 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue. 100 meters away. It's closing fast.
3Z2M calling CQ. 3Z2M calling CQ. 3Z2M calling CQ. Manhattan? Isn't anyone on the air? Isn't anyone on the air? Isn't anyone... 3Z2M.
You are listening to an EBS presentation of Silver Speech in the Equestria Theater on the Air, in an original dramatization of An Equestrian Invasion by Quillstroke. The performance will continue after a brief intermission. This is the Equestria Broadcasting Service, An Equestrian Invasion by Quillstroke, starring Silver Speech and the Equestria Theater on the Air.
As I set these notes down on paper, I am obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living pony on the planet. I wonder what's happened to the sea ponies, the dragons, the zebras, the buffalo, the griffins. I've been hiding in this empty house near Grazer's Hills, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures in the world seems now part of another life, a life that has no continuity with the present furtive existence of the lonely derelict who pencils these words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Focal Lens. I look down at my blackened hooves, my broken glasses, my tattered waistcoat, and I try to connect them with the professor who lives at Trottingham, and who a week before Nightmare Night glimpsed through his telescope a splash of blue light on a distant moon. My wife, my colleagues, my students, my books, my observatory, my world, where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Focal Lens? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no hooves left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself that I shall preserve equine history between the dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of the stars, but to write I must live, and to live I must eat. I find spoiled daffodils in the kitchen, and an apple not too rotten to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time I catch sight of a moon mare above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil, but at length there's a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a moon mare mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam, as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in a corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house, and, exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning. Morning. Sun streams in through the window. The black cloud of gas is lifted, and scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm has passed over them. I venture from the house. I make my way to a road. No traffic. Here and there a wrecked cart, baggage overturned, and a blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them, and I keep a careful watch. I have seen the moon mares feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of the trees, I'm ready to fling myself flat on the ground. I come to a chestnut tree. Late autumn. Chestnuts are ripe. I fill the pockets of my waistcoat. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature, a small flying squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him in wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. Push on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field, and beyond, the charred ruins of their dairy farm. A grain silo remains standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. The next day I came to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off as if a dragon had sliced off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of his claws. I reached the outskirts, and I found Bucksburg, undemolished, but humbled by some whim of the advancing moonmares. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something crouching in a doorway. I made a step towards it, and it rose up and became a stallion. A stallion armed with a large knife.
Stop! Where did you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago from Trottingham.
Trottingham, huh? That's near Grazer's Hills.
Yes.
Grazer's Hills? There's no food there. This is my country. All this end of town down to the river, there's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for ponies.
Hey, what was that? Did you hear something just then?
No, only a bird. A live bird.
Yeah, well, you get to know that birds have shadows these days. Say, we're in the open here. Let's crawl in this here doorway and talk.
Have you seen any moonmares?
Nah, all gone over to Manhattan. At night the sky is alive with their lights, just as if ponies were still living in it. By daylight you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I think they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Well, then it's all over with equine civilization. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
They got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those orange stars, they're probably falling somewhere new every night. They've only lost 1 machine, though. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in a uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the Royal Guard. That's good. There wasn't any war, though. Any more than there's a war between ponies and ants.
Yes, but we're edible ants. I found that out. What will they do to us?
See, I've thought it all out. Right now we're caught as we're wanted. Celestia and Luna abandoned us. The dragons didn't stand a chance. The moonmares only have to go a few kilometers to get to a crowd on the run. But they won't keep on doing that. They'll begin catching us systematic-like, keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. But they haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun. All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet, bother them with guns and such stuff, and losing our heads and rushing off into crowds. Now, instead of our rushing around blind, we gotta fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up according to the way things are now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress.
Yes, but if that's so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for 1,000,000 years or so, and no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's amusement you're after, well, I guess the game's up.
What is there left?
Life! That's what. I want to live. Yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated, and I don't mean to be caught either. Tamed and fattened and bred like a chicken.
What are you going to do?
I'm going on. Right under their talons. I got a plan. We colts as colts are finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we got a chance. And we've gotta live and keep free while we learn, see? I've thought it all out, see?
Well, tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts. That's what it's gotta be. That's why I watched you. Watched you, all those little office workers that used to live in these houses. They'd be no good. They haven't any stuff in them. They used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them running to catch their commuter's train in the morning, afraid they'd get canned if they didn't, running back at night, afraid they won't be in time for their little precious dinners. Lives insured and a little invested in case of accidents, and on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. Well, the moon mares, they'll be a godsend for those guys. Nice roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. After a week or so chasing around the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
Sure, you bet I have. That isn't all either. These moon mares, they're gonna make pets of some of them. Train them to do tricks, who knows? Get sentimental over the pet colt who grew up and had to be killed. Yeah, and some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
No. No, it's impossible. No, Pony.
Yes, they will. There's ponies who will do it gladly. If one of them ever comes after me, why...
Well, in the meantime, you and I, and others like us, where are we to live when moon mares rule the planet?
I've got it all figured out. You're gonna like this. We'll live underground. I've been thinking about the sewers. Under Manhattan, there are kilometers and kilometers of them. The main ones are big enough for any pony. Then there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, and service tunnels. You begin to see, huh? We'll get a bunch of strong stallions together. No weak ones, though. That rubbish, out.
As you meant me to go.
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
I won't quarrel about that. Go on.
Well, we've got to make safe places for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can, like science books. That's where colts like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums, we'll even spy on the moon mares. May not be so much we have to learn before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off. Heat beams right and left, and not a moon mare in them. Not a moon mare in them, see? But colts. Colts who have learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Gee, imagine having one of them lovely things with its heat beam wide and free. We turn on moon mares. We turn on ponies. We bring every pony down on their knees.
That's your plan?
Yeah. You and me, and a few more of us, we'd own the world.
I see.
Hey, what's the matter? Where you going?
Not to your world. Bye, stranger. Well, after parting with the guard, I came at last to the Miramare Tunnel. I entered that silent tube, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the starry main. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder and several bodies, and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up through the 30s and 40s, stood alone on Clockmaker Square, caught sight of a lean dog down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws and a pack of starving mongrels at his heels, made a wide circle around me as though he feared I might prove some fresh competitor. Walked up Broadway in the direction of that strange powder, past the silent shop windows displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks. Past the Capitol Theater, silent dark. Past a shooting gallery where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Cardinal Row's Circle, I noticed some models of old carts in the showrooms facing empty streets. Over the top of the broadcasting tower, I watched a flock of black birds circling in the sky and hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of a hood of a moon mare machine standing somewhere in the Royal Gardens, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. It had risen on its own today, for the past few days. An insane idea. I rushed across the Cardinal Row's Circle and into the park. I climbed the hill above the pond at 42nd Street, and from there I could see, standing in a silent row of them all, 18 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their great steel forelegs hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabit those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to an immense flock of black birds hovering below me. They circled the ground, and there, before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the moon mares, with hungry birds pecking and tearing shreds of brown flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in laboratories, it was found that they were killed by putrefactive and pathogenic bacteria against which their systems were unprepared, slain after all ponies' defenses had failed by the humblest thing that the goddesses in their infinite wisdom had put on this planet. Before the first cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deep of space no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further. Dim and wonderful is the vision I have conjured in my mind of life spreading slowly from this little seedbed of the solar system throughout the inanimate vastness of sidereal space. But a remote dream it may be. It may be that the destruction of the moon mares is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us, is the future ordained, perhaps. Strange it now seems to sit in my peaceful study at Trottingham writing down the last chapter of the record begun in a deserted farm in Grazer's Hills. Strange to watch the colts and fillies playing in the streets. Strange to see young ponies strolling on the green where the new spring grass heals the last black scars of a bruised continent. Strange to watch the sightseers enter the museum where the dissembled parts of a Moonmare machine are kept on public view. Strange when I recall when I first saw it, bright and clean-cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of that last great day. And most of all, strange to see the sun and moon rise of their own accord. A new government for a new age, an extravagant tomb for our princesses, and no clue as to their whereabouts. This is Silver Speech, fillies and gentlecolts, out of character to assure you that an Equestrian Invasion has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was intended to be. The Equestria Theater's own radio version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and saying boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal your garden gates by tomorrow night, so we did the next best thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the EBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open for business. So, goodbye, every pony. And remember, please, for the next day or so, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch, and if your doorbell rings and no pony's there, that was no Moonmare. It's Nightmare Night.
Tonight, the Equestria Broadcasting Service and its affiliated stations coast to coast has brought you an Equestrian Invasion by Quillstroke, the 17th in its weekly series of dramatic broadcasts featuring Silver Speech and the Equestria Theater on the air. Next week, we present a dramatization of 3 famous short stories. This is the Equestria Broadcasting Service.
Well, my friends, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. Should you feel the need to contact any of the voice actors or musicians, it's in the description, and if you'd like a copy, there's an MP3 download link right there. I hope you enjoyed it. Safe travels, every pony. This is Vostes Sueños signing off.